can tell us we're crazy, and we can say, well, you haven't seen anything yet.
Possessed by perfection in this land, if you're awake, you're the enemy. The more it starts to stink, the more you fall for it. The more it starts to stink, the more you fall for it. It's never going to quit. Where they lead, you will follow. Well, I guess that's just the way it goes. And if you look away, you'll be doing what they say. And if you look alive, you'll be singled out and tried. If you every day a new deception, pick your scene and take direction, and on a search to connect, but I don't wear a mask and I have no regret. Down on your knees, you don't look so tall. Open your eyes and the empire falls. I don't know what place that I wanna find. Could you just open your eyes and free your mind? And here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Mental Mastery Alliance podcast. Today I have with me a returning guest. This fella, I'll do the intro, even though you see his name in the headline. He's been with us for, I think, 3 episodes of the 9/11 special. He's the guy that I always want to talk to. I don't think we got the opportunity to talk to him last year. Just life got in the way. So I don't even think we did a 9/11 episode, but I know that he was here way back in the beginning. He was my absolute go-to guy for that. I love this guy's knowledge, his energy, his passion. I met him 10 years ago. Actually 11 years ago. I have no idea how time is flying as much as it is.
I know.
But Craig has been around with us in heart and in spirit since day one. So Craig McKee, welcome back to the Mental Mastery Alliance with your 9/11 expertise.
Well, thank you for having me again, Adam. It's great to be back. I do recall being on your podcast at least a couple of times,
Yeah.
and we got into some good stuff then. But I'm glad to be back, and it's another anniversary, and so it's good timing.
It's a wild thing, and I've said 1,000 times over and over again to the audience, to anyone who listen. We have all of these conspiracies that go on, and as time progresses, they're less and less conspiracy and more obviously factual. I'm interested in why 9/11 is so interesting to me in this sense is, ladies and gentlemen, before I carry on a little bit further, I will say that this was pre-recorded. We're not recording this on September 11th because you just never know what's going to happen or if you can get everybody to come and show up at the same time. Craig, again, I don't want to take away from him directly on the day because who knows what he's going to be doing. But yeah, so this is pre-recorded, but as far as everyone knows, you're listening to it on September 11th. Ooh. So the 9/11 community to me is one of those communities that is fascinating. You go online and you can find a 9/11 group anywhere on Facebook. And if you go in there and just say that 9/11 was an inside job, you've got like 10 people that'll chirp you right away and say it wasn't. Inside this community of an event that happened 20 years ago, well, more than that, but 20-odd years ago, how come, in your opinion, how come there are people all of these years later actively defending the narrative. What do you think that's all about?
Well, I think that there are some people who are simply, I think, paid to do that.
Hmm.
There are people that are, you know, you can call them infiltrators, you can call them trolls, or you can call them agents, but they're planted there to do that very thing. So that's one group. And in terms of just why the public would tend to want to still stick with the official story, I think that's a good question, and I think it's a combination of things. I think one of the things is that people are not, I don't want to say lazy, but let's just say that they're a lot of people are quite happy to have the mainstream media do their research for them, and they don't really want to put a lot of effort or any effort into questioning whether what they're being told is true or not. They're just it's like a comfort level. It's comfortable to just have the truth provided to you and not to question it. And it seems to take a certain type of person, like me and you, I think, who are willing to, who don't feel that we need to accept whatever we're told in order to feel secure. We're quite happy to challenge things and to look at evidence, and our worldview is not so rigidly rooted, I guess, in mainstream narratives that, so we're able to question these things, but a lot of people don't. And I know a lot of people personally who, and I listen to their responses to these things whenever they come up, and I kind of think about, well, what is going on in their heads? Like, are they afraid of the implications? And I think in some cases there is some of that. Do people fear that their whole worldview is going to be turned upside down if they open the door to asking some of these questions and challenging narratives? Because it really does mean, like, if you don't believe that the 9/11 official story, that means you're prepared to believe that the whole, most likely, the entire U.S. government, well, not the entire U.S. government, but the powerful movers in the U.S. government are capable of such a mass deception, and that the mainstream media are happy to prop that up and not to question it hardly at all. So that's a big, to think that, that things are that grim, that's hard for a lot of people. And they would much rather just kind of like hold their hands over their ears, figuratively speaking, and just they don't want to hear it. Because to even go down that road a little bit, it almost, I think they feel it puts a little bit of responsibility on them to continue to ask questions. And so you'll hear a lot of people say, well, there's just so much, I know there's questions, but I just, I think we'll never really know the answer. And that's a common one. I've heard people say that even going back to the Kennedy assassination.
Right.
I've seen friends of mine say, well, we just never really are going to know. And I think that's their way of just kind of staying in their comfortable place where, they're able to say, gee, there are some unanswered questions, but they don't want to go further than that. So that's all I can say, because most of the people that I would disagree with about 9/11 are people that really don't know the evidence. They only know what they see maybe once a year in a National Geographic documentary,
Some
or
sort of a tribute, yeah.
something on PBS or something,
Well, now you're probably even arguing with kids that weren't even born when the towers stood.
Well, yeah, you're right. You're right. And yet that leads in some interesting directions, because there are a lot of young people, I think, today that are open to questioning things
More so than
and I think there's yeah, exactly. And there's a more distrust of the media, I think, now than there ever has been.
One thing that I sort of cut you off. One thing that I noticed in this, and that I've even talked about, is the fact that now in 2024, we have the entire history of the media to look back on. And when you start cross-referencing the media itself, you realize that literally from inception, it was designed to deceive you. And I think about that and I think, I mean, if you think about global warming and global cooling and all of the things that the hole in the ozone layer and the this and the that, and even, the war with Russia, the Cold War, all of these wars and all of these things that take place, you're like, the media really pumped them up. And as we're sitting here right now and we're looking at this Ukrainian thing and all these Canadians are paying all this exorbitant amount of taxes, we're getting eaten alive in inflation, which is also fake. It's just a way of stealing our money back. You eradicate a person's wealth by just saying it means less. Your wealth means nothing. And that's an interesting thing. We've got, the COVID narrative alone should have shown a lot of people just how deceptive the government was. On top of the COVID narrative, we had the trucker narrative that rolled through Canada, and Canada's not a big place, right? So it's not hard to catch up with the entirety of everything. And I even lost friends over the fact that this guy said, because he heard on the news that phantom honking was terrorizing people. Phantom honking. And
yeah,
they use that to combat me, when for the past prior to phantom honking, for the past 3 years, the government had been crushing businesses completely fabricated, just willy-nilly as they saw fit. And so it is wild to watch these people not think. At one point, I remember thinking to myself, like, this is a bad thing for society, for humanity. This is bad. But I sit back now with my knowledge and with my understanding and comprehension of it, and I think to myself, this is good. Simply because you're literally witnessing, you could even say biblically, you're witnessing the rapture. You're seeing the division between those who can think and those who can think. You're seeing the division between those who want to stay firmly planted in the third dimension of do as you're told, do all this sort of stuff, don't ask any questions, and those that are rising above, going to the fourth and fifth dimension of being able to think for themselves, to understand things, to question things, to move accordingly, to adjust their body, their diet, their way of thinking, feeling, being, acting, all of it. You're literally watching the ascension, the two come apart. And to me, it's like, I don't have to, this sounds terrible, I don't have to waste my time trying to prove anything to anybody anymore. I get the opportunity now to connect with like-minded individuals, understand my journey better, understand the overall totality of the journey better, be able to, I guess the term is not compete, but collaborate instead. And you're seeing a lot of this now. So am I upset at the way the narrative goes? No, I think that we need to see this total and utter collapse. But this also stems back to, I was thinking about when I said the kids, there are kids alive today that are probably arguing with you that were never alive when the tower stood. That's a microcosm of our history as well. There are things that we were born after that we've debated. For me, it's the Kennedy assassination. I wasn't around for that. I wasn't around for Pearl Harbor, but I can talk about it, right? Because it's history. The kids today talk about 9/11 but weren't there. And it's interesting to see them make their points about certain things like that. It's just, I think, a wild time right now for information as a whole.
It is a wild time, and it's an interesting question about young people. I mean, they're, in schools, kids are being taught the official story of 9/11.
Right.
So they've, that's an obstacle. Like but on the other hand, they have access to the internet, which is something that wouldn't have existed at one time. And that's, I think why we've seen that over the last 10 years, especially, a real clampdown by the establishment and the tech companies on speech and dissent. When you at one time, not that long ago, if you did a search on Google for a 9/11 related topic, you'd have a chance of seeing websites come up that challenge the official story. And now you really have to dig for that. You really are going to see, or you have to put something very specific in the search bar to get to something like my blog, for instance. So it's people are only being fed official sources, Popular Mechanics, CNN, and all this kind of stuff. Even when you even when you do searches for moon landing faked or something like that, you'll still get all kinds of uh, official viewpoints or mainstream viewpoints telling you why they weren't faked. So it so that the more things sort of go in a positive direction, the more there's pushback coming from the other side, which again makes it more of a challenge to get through to people. I did want to comment on something you said about how you're kind of good with talking to like-minded people, and I wish I wish I was satisfied with that, I guess, but I guess I wish I could be more satisfied with it, because I find it, I feel a need to get through to people, because I think to myself, you mentioned deceptions, and every war starts with a deception. And when you have no media that's willing to tell you the truth about these things, then these things go ahead, and not just wars, but other bad things like COVID. If so, I guess I feel like I need to carry the message beyond the community that already agrees with me, because I think it's through, because of the ignorance of, and I don't mean ignorance as an insult, but the lack of knowledge of so many people. That's why this stuff can be done, and that's why we have stuff like the Ukraine war. You mentioned the Ukraine war, and it's interesting. Robert F. Kennedy, when he announced that he was dropping out of the race and throwing his support to Trump, he talked about the Ukraine war and the causes of it. And I don't think he talked about a number of things that I would think that networks wouldn't be happy with, but that was one of them. And it's no accident that they cut off halfway through his speech, cut away. He was saying a number of things that they wouldn't like. And I have my problems with Robert F. Kennedy, don't get me wrong, but particularly his Israel-Gaza position, I disagree with very strongly. But about Ukraine, he made the point, which is something that you really have no access to in mainstream media, which is that the U.S. backed a coup in Ukraine in 2014.
Yeah.
And then you have, Nazis within the Ukrainian military
and within
that were
United
pushing
States
for attacks on ethnic Russians in the eastern part of the country.
Yeah, the Nazis also run all of NASA. So these guys are, Germany never lost the war, they say, right?
That's definitely Operation Paperclip. Yeah. But I mean, there are actual Nazis running around in Ukraine with swastikas and everything. And they have their own battalion in the Ukraine army. So,
real true to life Nazis. And these are in Ukraine. And yet over here, we're just like funnel them more money. And I remember the coup that you're talking about. And ladies and gentlemen, you can Google this. Like, again, everything that we're talking about, Google it. And Craig, like you said, I don't want to talk to like-minded people. I think you misunderstood what I was saying. I enjoy talking to the community that knows a ton of stuff. Like, imagine I took my knowledge on Black Tom and Pearl Harbor and talked to you about your knowledge on 9/11. And then, we see patterns, we spot patterns, we grow, we become better versions of ourselves, and understanding and comprehension on that stuff. I will talk to people who have questions. This show reaches a ton of people that call us insane, and also reaches a ton of people that are like, fuck, I had questions about that, and I'm glad I got the answers from you guys, because this show isn't anything other than designed to make people think about how it is. But that topic, you said there's actual footage, at least there used to be, of I don't remember who was on the tapes, but they were talking about they were either going to put in this actor Zelensky, who had played the president for the past 4 years on a TV show, or they were going to put in that MMA guy, Klitschko, or I think it was Klitschko. But
not sure.
Those were the two choices, and it was on tape. These are the guys that we're going to put in as the president. Blah blah blah, and this is what we want to do with Ukraine. And anyone can say, "Oh, well, that could just be a fabricated tape. Why do you believe that and not something else?" And it's the same thing. It's like, it's like why do you believe? And what I'm about to say will certainly get us taken down from YouTube, so you're not going to be on the YouTube in case you're wondering. Um, how come I can say that Hunter Biden is smoking crack and doing all kinds of illicit, ridiculous, chaotic things with what appears to be the Biden daughters, or not Biden, the Obama daughters, and the Obama daughters, they appear to be somebody else's kids because Michelle appears to have a wiener. Right now, I'm gonna press this button right here, ladies and gentlemen. So this is kind of important.
Disclaimer. If you're going to soundbite any of this podcast, you must soundbite it in its entirety for consistency and context.
Yeah, so you can't just go ahead and take whatever you want. And look what he said. Well, it's all inconsistency and context. And this is all just hearsay. I'm not going to say that you can see Michelle's wiener in certain takes. But you know, and honestly, I don't care. I don't care if she's a man. There at no point have I ever cared about anybody's sexual orientation. Right. There's another big one. They're ramming that crap down our faces to the tune where you have to take notice of it in an interesting way. It's like, okay, why are you doing this? And I remember fucking years ago, you had said they shouldn't group everybody in because it makes certain people look like kitty diddlers. And you had said this years ago. Like you said, it makes gay people look like kitty diddlers. And I'm like, I think you're taking it a little bit too far. I remember, I don't know if that was on the show or if that was just a conversation you and I were having years ago. But look what they've done now with the LGBTQ2 plus, the whole 9 yards. There's the police calls. The police calls. This, by the way, was supposed to be a 9/11 episode, but of course we're going to go on tangents for sure. But there's a police call that says, hey, can I be naked downtown Toronto? Can I just have my wiener out? And I'm like, no, absolutely not. We'll arrest you. I'm like, well, what if I'm gay? You know, what if it's in the parade? And they're like, well, we're not going to touch that. I'm like, well, what if it's in front of kids in the parade? They're like, well, as long as you're not erect. It's like the cops are afraid of this narrative, right? And it's like, this to me is one of those things where it's like, you've got this weird movement going on where it's got nothing to do with straight people. It's got nothing to do with gay people. And it's got everything to do with chaos. What is this? Do you have a take on that? I'd be interested to know.
Oh, I definitely do. I do see it as a kind of part of the divide and conquer thing. Like, you know, it's sort of the whole there's critical race theory and there's gender ideology, and it all seems to be designed to get us into our own separate little boxes. You know, where identity is so important, and the more we focus on identity, the more we're going to see differences or at least categories. And I could, it makes me think of the George Carlin routine where he, and I won't be able to remember the words exactly, but where he's talking about how, you know, they want to make everybody, they want to highlight how our differences, not our similarities, not the things that we have in common, but the those in power want to highlight our differences all the time. And the way he ended it was he sort of said, you know, they keep us fighting amongst ourselves while they keep going to the bank.
Yeah.
And I think that pretty much sums it up. And I've made a couple of posts on Facebook about this. I personally believe that the lesbian and gay community should separate itself from all the other letters. And I think there should be, you know, the LGB should be its own thing. And which is not to say that I have any problem with anybody who decides they want to be trans or they want to live as the opposite sex. I don't believe you can be the opposite sex, but you can choose to live that way, and I have no problem with that. But I do have a problem with when women's rights are eroded as a result, as we've seen in sports and things like that. Yeah. But I really think that the gay community is really being hurt by this. And I think all you have to do is look at, there are opinion polls that have been done, and, you know, that show that after many, many, many years of steady increases in acceptance by the general population of the gay community, that for the first time in a long time, that acceptance level is starting to dip down again, and support for gay marriage is starting to go down. And that's because people are associating it with some of the more crazy kind of woke activism, which seems to want to, change all of society, and police language and cancel people for stepping out of line and censor and all these kinds of things. So I think this whole woke thing is, to me, it's happened. It has become such a big thing so suddenly that I just can't buy that it's just happening organically on its own.
Yeah. And you'll hear people say things like, these people have always existed. They're just now getting the ability to shine their light. And I disagree with that. I'm allowed to disagree with that. I do disagree with it because these people preach inclusivity, right? And if you say, I want to separate the LGBs from the rest of them, that makes you the bad guy. But here's an interesting thing, right? There's the LGBs, and these guys fought tooth and nail for the right of a straight person. Right. And in all honesty, why the hell couldn't they get married? Who the fuck cares? Get married, right? So this is the interesting thing. And then everybody on top of that piled back in. And I remember a buddy of mine, he quoted, I'll screw up his quote, but I can say, he mentioned something along the lines of, you don't want to fuck with the original OG LGBs. He goes, because we're the ones that fought everybody for everything, right? So he goes, and if you're going to piss us off with your 2+ this, that, and the other thing, and you're going to group us in, he goes, I'll tell you this right now. There's nothing that ties me into a trans. I'm a gay man. I'm still doing the quote, ladies and gentlemen. I'm a gay man, right? And I love penis, right? A trans wants to cut his penis off. What about that is similar to me, right? And he's going on this rant. And I thought to myself, like, this is fucking great. It's true, right? And the funny thing too about the inclusive, the inclusive community is straight people are not allowed to be part of the inclusive community, right? Because if you do that, if you include lesbians, gays, bis, straight people, and then everybody else, well, guess what? We're all in the same community now. We're all in the same fucking boat. So what this is it's reverse bullying. And I say reverse bullying because for so many years, the gay community has been oppressed by bullies. And, I'm not going to say that that's not true, because we've seen articles all over the place where gay people were targeted. And that's atrocious to me. But you target anybody and that's atrocious. And so it's like when I was younger, I got accused of being an asshole to women. And I'm not perfect. I'll never admit to being perfect. I walked through the gates of hell and hated myself so much and shit on everybody because of my own personal self-hate. I worked through all that. But the one comment that always pissed me off was you're an asshole to women. And every single time I heard that, I thought to myself, and I even said out loud, I'm like, that's fucking bullshit. And that's sexist. I'm an asshole to everyone equally. And I laughed at that at the time. And now looking back on it too, it's like, even back then people wanted to pigeonhole and if you're an asshole, that's one thing. But if you're an asshole to women, well, now you're a piece of shit. Right. So if you're like, I'm sure there's somebody out there that beat up a gay guy that didn't know he was gay, but all of a sudden there's like this hate crime warrant out for his arrest because he beat up this guy. And it was just a bar fight because the two of them bumped into each other in the bar. And people are too young to remember that bar fights used to be, you bump into somebody at the bar, ego goes after ego, you've both been drinking, you engage in fisticuffs, you punch each other a bunch of times, and then 90% of the time, you end up being friends with the people you just fought. That used to be fights in the bars. So now it's like, I'm not a piece of shit. I'm not a terrible person. I just did what I always did. Somebody could say that's in a fight. And this division that keeps going. And I don't think people should fight. I don't think there should be. I don't think that should be a thing. But this is society, right? The war, media, everyone tells you it's okay to fight. Like, murder is absolutely a no bueno, unless your government says go and murder that person because they're wearing a different color flag than you. Right. And so it's like we cross a lot of barriers. We cross a lot of lines. And if we don't ask questions, just like you and I were talking about earlier, if we don't ask questions, at what point does the line stop? Like that, you'll know the clip, they took away so-and-so, but it didn't bother me. So I didn't say anything. Then they came for this and I didn't say anything. And then they came for me and there was nobody left to defend me. And
Yeah, it's a
that's where we
powerful
are
quote.
right now.
Yeah.
Everybody's getting eaten up.
Well,
Uh,
and a lot of, as I kind of was saying, that a lot of the divisions that seem to be plaguing society, I think are contrived divisions. That's what, I had to say, even though I don't support either of the two main parties in the US. I think I think they're two sides of the same
two
deep
wings of the
state
same bird.
coin, but yeah, exactly. But there was a part of me that when I watched Robert F. Kennedy get up on stage with Donald Trump, there was some part of me that found satisfaction in that. And the reason I did was not because of the electoral effect, but it was just the idea that the the mainstream and the establishment wants so badly for us all to be divided and in our own camps that when you have somebody that is a traditional liberal and a person who's already been the president as a Republican, able to find some common ground, even though they, I'm sure, have some big areas of disagreement. Like Kennedy's a climate change guy, and more than Trump is, I think. Um, so there's areas where they disagree for sure, but uh, the fact that two people that shouldn't be agreeing on anything were able to kind of find some common ground um, gave me just I don't know, a little bit of a feeling of hope, even though ultimately I don't depend on electoral results for a solution to problems. But it seems to me that there's more there's more common ground to be found, and it's in the interests of the powers that be to keep us from discovering that, because it's when we find common ground and we can relate to each other as human beings instead of as categories. Then maybe people can achieve more. Then they can achieve more than they could sort of fighting each other. I guess that's not very, I didn't say that very well, but when we're working together and we see our perhaps a common enemy, which I would suggest is kind of the elites or whatever. If we can see that, then I think we have a much better chance of making a better world
Can we
than we do
organize?
if we're all fighting each other.
And do you think we can organize
What's
without
that?
being called a conspiracy theorist? Do you think we can organize? Do you think that the people that don't own the TVs and the radios,
It's
uh,
hard.
yeah,
It's very hard. I mean, the one thing I'd say, and this gets back to 9/11 again, is that we have seen some people who are quite well known start to talk about 9/11 in recent months. And that's pretty interesting because for the longest time, I think you wouldn't find, like, when I say people that are well known, obviously it's not like a host on NBC or something like that, but it's the sort of alternative slash, like on the outskirts of the mainstream, kind of like people like Tucker Carlson, Russell Brand, Candace Owens, um, and sorry, I'm going to turn my message thing off. Candace Owens, and who else am I thinking of here? Um, well, I can't. I mean, those are the first four that come into my head. But
do you trust these people?
uh, well, I don't necessarily trust them, but the point is they're now willing to go there,
Yeah.
and if they're willing to go there, then that might open the door to other people being willing to go there. Um, like for the longest time, like for instance, Jimmy Dore. I'm a fan of Jimmy Dore. I think he's I really like what he does with his show. Um, and he didn't really talk about 9/11 for a long time, and I kind of assumed that he may have some doubts, but maybe he just thinks that he's taking too big a risk with his audience. But now he's openly questioning it. So It's not so much who I trust or don't trust as it is that this might be, if this is the beginning of something, maybe it's a hopeful sign, because but of course there's always the possibility that things get talked about when a certain amount of time passes. Like nobody's really threatened in the establishment by somebody saying that Lee Harvey Oswald didn't kill Kennedy, and it's enough time has passed that they don't really, I don't think they care that much. Although it's still pretty controlled. If you watch a mainstream report about that refers to the Kennedy assassination, they will often talk about the assassin, Lee Harvey Oswald,
Right.
and not even bother to say the alleged assassin. So time does sort of maybe make things easier to talk about, but I don't know. I saw a little bit of hope in that, just because I think, then if people see, a podcaster that they follow talking about it, then that gives them perhaps the more, people who might be a little bit timid to do it. It gives them kind of permission to start asking those same questions.
You get a bigger
I don't
effect.
know why all those people are doing it all at once, but it's a slightly hopeful sign.
See, my problem too is, like, it was great watching Shapiro and Owens and all of these guys do their thing. But it's almost like the more they go down it, the more I'd say I don't trust them. And
sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, no, the idea is, like you said, it's good that they're talking about it, because if they're talking about it, anyone that's watching them would be like, oh, well, maybe. And the more people that do talk about it, it becomes the 100th monkey at this point. But yeah, for 9/11 and for a bunch of other things, like, there's so much that needs to be talked about. It's going to be wild when the quote unquote COVID bullshit, really hits the fan. But even now, guys like you and me who are actively aware of all this stuff haven't really given it much thought. The fact that they chained up swing sets so people couldn't swing, like the amount of work that went into perpetuating that fucking bullshit was absolutely wild. And the amount of people that still, like the amount of people that might even turn this show off and be like, fuck you, you don't believe in COVID. I lost an aunt or an uncle or whatever, people got sick. People got the flu. People got sick. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the narrative that shut down North America. The narrative that had people fucking putting 2x4s on basketball nets so kids couldn't have a good time outside. This idea that they took you away from vitamin D, they took you away from your family, they took you away from singing happy birthday. The absurdities that they fucking put out there, the kids that had to sit behind plexiglass. Fucking insane. The arrows in the grocery store. We don't think about that stuff. But all of this existed. They went balls to the wall insane. And anyone that questioned it was canceled. Now, thankfully, I don't care about being canceled anymore, because I've already been canceled so many times. And somebody once said, you can't get canceled. You just find your audience. If a bunch of people are shitting on you, which happened to me, I ended up getting inundated with Instagram followers because my account said this account tends to share false information whenever somebody came across my page. And if that's the case, then people are like, oh, I want to know what he's got to say, because if the institution is afraid of him, then there's something that he's doing that's right. So there's a lot of it that goes into it. There's a lot that, I guess, has to be exactly the way it is for the majority of the waking world to continue waking. And that's what I like. Back to what we were talking about earlier. That's what I like. I'm not here to talk to an echo chamber. I'm here to create conversation that has people get willing to ask questions, which is why I'm not angry at the Alex Jones. Like, Alex Jones took that $1 billion lawsuit. I'm like, Jesus Christ, this guy's like such an agent. It's ridiculous. And the idea being, if you speak out, you're going to get sued for $1 billion, right? If anyone, like Alex Jones got sued for $1 billion and he was found guilty of $1 billion. He had to pay some family $1 billion, right? That's fucking retarded. And you can't even say that because that's offensive, right? But in 1990, it wasn't offensive. So,
right.
Why it's absurd to me is people are now afraid to say the word retarded. People are afraid to talk about the gays. people are afraid to talk about anything because you might get sued for $1 billion, because all of these people demonstrated all of this stuff at one point or another and put all of these ideas into the heads of people, which make these people not want to talk about anything and be fearful of their loved ones who are talking about things. So not only are you afraid yourself to say things, you're afraid of what your loved ones will think of you if you do say these things, which in my opinion is a massive psyop as well. And that locks people into not having the discussions, not talking about anything. Think about before the world went crazy. What were the 3 topics that we weren't allowed to talk about? Politics, religion, and finance. Imagine if we talked about those topics in 1980, where we'd be right now. Who's earning what? Who's doing what? Who's following who? What political charge is all about? You don't talk about these things in polite company. Oh, okay. We were tricked.
Well, yeah. I mean, I know if the subject of COVID ever comes up in gatherings with people that I'm close to, it I feel that very quickly that I'm being, kind of tolerated, as opposed to, it's like, okay, all right, we're uncomfortable, and so, yeah, it's still uncomfortable to go against the crowd. And I certainly don't mind people. Like, I took, plenty of abuse during that time because I was constantly posting fairly angry, making fairly angry posts about it, because I felt I could see what was going on. And it wasn't so much, it was people that I knew very well that I was disappointed in. I had some people that I've known literally for decades, and have been very close to, who were saying, really horrible things.
Right.
This one woman that I went to university with, a very long time ago. She when she saw what I was posting, she had a COVID-19 page on Facebook, and she was going with the official narrative the whole way, and she went for the kind of, to me, the very lazy, claim that I was being selfish because I wanted to be able to participate in society. And her take on that was, I didn't care who I hurt. I just wanted to. She actually said, all I care about is my entertainment privileges. So that's like code for participating in society. Like,
that's right.
Me wanting to go to a restaurant was not caring about other human beings. Of course, I always said that if you, or I said to her that if somebody is afraid of going out in public because they think they're going to get sick from someone else, well, then they should not go out in public.
Right.
They shouldn't be able to make me stay home while they go to restaurants.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I think I lost some friends, and I certainly had some people who I, even if I restored communication with them, things are not the same, So it did, and I'll add this, actually, that there are people I know in the 9/11 Truth movement who are not in agreement about COVID, and that was pretty shocking to me. Some people that totally saw through the 9/11 deception, but swallowed everything about COVID.
That's wild.
It is wild. It's. I mean, and so you can see how each new deception that's unveiled divides us in different ways.
Yeah.
So you get 9/11, you got people divided. Are they for it being the official narrative or against it? Then you get the people against it. They're divided by COVID, and they're divided by identity politics, and they're divided by Trump versus Biden or Trump versus Harris. Yeah, I mean, so it's we're constantly dealing with new reasons to be separated from people that we otherwise might be able to talk to and might be able to find some common ground with. So
I personally, when it comes to all of it, I don't believe any of it. anything that's handed to me, I look through it. Like I try to see, where the hook is, where the angle is. So I will never stand. Like if I hear on TV, there's COVID-2 coming, COVID-2, the monkeypox. I I'm not going to believe it. If there's anything that comes out that I'm like, this is true, this is really happening, I'm like, no. They could literally say aliens are coming from above, right? And they're coming to take you. I'm like, no, unless I see it with my own eyes, I don't believe it. And so there's nothing in this world that would ever have me standing for anything, or nothing in this world that would ever have me siding with any version or form of authoritative government or police or overlord or anything like that. There isn't a single thing. So that's what blows me away. 9/11 was a huge one for me in my personal life. I remember where I was. I had just broken my ankle. I was laid up on the couch, and I was at my dad's house. And he's like, a plane just flew into the World Trade Center. I'm like, meh. I just thought like Cessna, whatever. And he comes back. And he's like, nah, a second plane just flew into the World Trade Center. I'm like, I guess I'll get up now. And I went and started watching the news coverage, and I'm like, oh, this seems a bit weird. I'm like, this is a movie. And I don't know if it was my brain playing tricks on me, but I remember seeing the woman talk about the fifth, the other tower, World Trade Center, whatchamacallit, coming down. And I'm like, it's right there. It hasn't come down. But I don't know if that's just history playing tricks on my brain. But that was there. That actually, regardless of anything, that's a recording. She's talking about it coming down. Well, it's literally behind her. So it's like, this was a huge one for me. And it was so big that it altered the way I lived my life. It changed fundamentally how things go. And then as life progresses and you sort of get yourself into your own little troubles and nuances, and for me personally, dealing with the police quite a bit for a few years, I realized that everything that they do is fake too. Everything that they do is implied, and it's your own fear that has you do as you're told type of thing. And you realize that the power just isn't really there. And you realize that a lot of this world really truly is an illusion. So I don't understand how somebody can go all in on 9/11 and be like, wow, it opened my eyes, and then do some research and find out about the Kennedy assassination, find out about the moon landing, like not find out, but like re-look at it through Stanley Kubrick's eyes, find out about Pearl Harbor and the information that they've got, and understanding that they put the boats together. This was an American organized attack to get them into the war, and then you sort of look more and more and more, and you see this stuff, and then you start asking questions about what the hell's Antarctica, what the hell's Summers Gate, what the hell's going on down here, what is all this about, what's Operation High Jump, what is Admiral Byrd up to, and you start asking all these questions for this to be the parlay and the semblance of how the brain works, and you start going down these things, you start asking these questions, for COVID to then roll around and be like, whoa, we're all gonna die. That shit floors me. So those people that you knew that were pro or that were on the page of the conspiracy minded, it's not a conspiracy anymore. In my take, this isn't a conspiracy. The conspiracy is that we still believe ourselves when the bullshit comes around. And that's the conspiracy, to not immediately question anybody that's in charge of television or the message that you're receiving. Right. So you have to go really deep after that. But I have, and in my take on certain things, it all comes down to my perception. And then people are going to say, oh, that sounds egregious and that sounds selfish. And what do you really know? I'm like, it's me. It's only me. It's me thinking and talking out loud and sharing ideas. That's all it is. It's got nothing to do with anybody else. I'm not trying to kill grandma because I didn't get fucking 18,000 vaccine boosters and all this crap. It was a scam to me from day one. It was a scam.
Yeah.
I actively and tangibly remember what's his name doing the interview, the basketball interview, and then them being like, oh, well, he's got COVID. I'm like, you think one person spread COVID throughout the entire world? And then we're just going to ignore the fact that we thought bats peed in soup, and then we're going to ignore the fact that it was a level 5,000 biohazard escape that can be stopped with a fucking piece of cloth across your face. And then it's not about the virus. It's about the spitballs. It's about the this. It's about the and you need 12 masks and a face shield, and fucking you gotta jack off with rubber gloves on. You got to have sex in glory holes. Goddamn, what's your name out in BC? Legit said that on the news. Theresa Tam. I believe that woman was CGI from the get-go. I don't think she's a real person, right? Because she showed up and she was the most hated person in the world for God knows how long, and then she just disappeared, right? So who knows what Theresa Tam was, or if she even still exists or is anywhere right now. In my take, she was just CGI. She was just a figurehead, and that just reminds me of when Trudeau would show up to places, and then you would see like him surrounded by people, but it was just, 50 people, 50 paid actors to stand near him as he's like at a building somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
You can't take any of it seriously. I don't know. I went on a bit of a tangent there. And like I said, this was supposed to, that wasn't supposed to be a 9/11 episode. It was just we got the 9/11 guy to talk about everything that's been going on since then. And you're still the 9/11 guy.
Well, I try to be. I mean, I've kind of specialized in the Pentagon's kind of been my specialty in 9/11. There's a lot of people talk about the towers and talk about the evidence of the towers, and they probably do a better job than I could do on that. So I kind of gravitated to the Pentagon because I thought I could see that there were people supposedly inside the movement, that were kind of spreading disinformation about that. And so it seemed like that was the area where the real the agents seemed to be focusing their attention on. So why it kind of became my specialty. It wasn't really my original plan, but it just once it became clear to me that a 757 did not hit the Pentagon, then I realized, the implications of that are that, the U.S. government had to have been behind it, or certainly, among other entities possibly, but had to be behind it because, you can't fake a plane crash at the Pentagon without the Pentagon being involved.
Yeah.
So
I believe that the media is just another arm of the government entirely, all of it.
Yeah.
It's not like they're propping up stories. They exist to do this.
Yeah.
To make it that way. And it's funny too. Like I remember you posted something years ago about there was a close up of a taxi cab with like holes in the back seat, and that was proof that the plane hit the building. What people don't even talk about Pennsylvania. Apparently, when the plane hit the ground rippled like water and swallowed the plane whole. And nobody questioned that. Nobody questioned. That's literally the narrative. And nobody questioned it. Pennsylvania, it was heroes that put that plane down. How dare you talk about anything but the heroes? Heroes risked everything for your safety.
Yeah.
All right.
It sounds like something written by a Hollywood screenwriter, doesn't it? The whole the heroic, I mean,
with box cutters.
That it makes me think of the Jessica Lynch. Do you remember the Jessica Lynch thing? She was a soldier who was injured, and she was taken to an Iraqi hospital, and then she was being held by the Iraqi army, and the Americans had to break in and free her. And it turned out the whole thing had been kind of fabricated. There were actually no Iraqi soldiers in the hospital at all, and the American soldiers just came in, and there she was, she being cared for in the hospital. That nobody was holding her hostage, but it was like a Hollywood story that they thought would play well, and of course it did play well. And the Shanksville thing you just mentioned, Shanksville, Pennsylvania, where that might be the most ridiculous part of the whole 9/11 official story. The idea that a 757 crashed in an open field and literally was swallowed up by the earth completely.
Yeah.
And so that the entire plane ended up, or almost the entire plane, ended up buried under the ground. And this is something I only discovered a couple of years ago. I didn't even realize this. The official account is it's still down there. Like, the plane is literally still under the ground, according to the official account. It's ridiculous. And it's also another clue about the people that I point to as being suspicious inside the 9/11 truth movement, the ones that are trying to convince everybody that the government's being truthful about the Pentagon part of it. They also seem to be, on board, or some of them are, with the idea that the plane really did bury itself under the ground. So that's the craziest of all things, I think, because I mean, when have you seen a plane crash? I mean, sometimes planes will crash into mountains, and so you'll see like little bits of stuff all over, but that's because it's hitting a mountain. This wasn't a mountain. This was like Earth.
Yeah.
And so you would expect to see something
A fuselage,
left.
maybe an engine
Fuselage.
somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
The second, in that same vein, the second most ridiculous thing. Well, the second most ridiculous thing is the fact that they finally hunted down Bin Laden. They took him out with snipers. And they threw him in the river to respect his.
Yeah, and we never got to see his body. Yeah, that.
Yeah,
I wrote about that at the time and said that that's basically bogus. It was like the Bin Laden as the boogeyman was useful for those first, I guess 9 or 10 years.
Yeah,
he was kind of like the face of evil, and then once people kind of got tired of that, it wasn't really having particular effect anymore. Nobody was scared of Bin Laden anymore. Then they decided, okay, we can convert this into a different kind of public relations tool. Now it's like we're the good, we got the bad guy. Like, look how great we are. So yeah, the whole thing was fabricated. I think Bin Laden. All accounts seem to be that Bin Laden was probably dead long before that.
What's your take on Bin Laden being Tim Osman?
Well, honestly, you know what? I've heard that many times, that being his CIA handle or whatever. I don't know if I've looked deeply enough into that evidence to really say. It's certainly the idea that he's cooperating with the CIA doesn't surprise me in the slightest. And I know that David Ray Griffin wrote a whole book about Bin Laden, and I have not read it. So I don't. I know that Bin Laden was visited by the CIA station chief, I believe the one in Kabul, I think in August of 2001, and he was in the hospital he was in Dubai, I think, in the hospital, and he was dealing with kidney problems. So the month before 9/11, he gets visited by the local CIA station chief. I think there's plenty of evidence to be shown, I would think, and I'm sure there are other people that have looked into it more closely that could make the case that he was an asset for sure. Yeah.
Well, that and the Bin Laden family type of thing. They were the only ones flying after.
Well, they're connected. Yeah, exactly.
So it's interesting. I mean, all of these takes, and I look at this stuff and I think this is just the media manipulation that we have to sift through and look at and certainly ask questions about. I just wish that for one day somebody would just come out and be like, this is really what's going on. This is why we're deceiving you. This is what it's all about. I would love to know what the purpose is. Like, why all the deception? Like, honestly, like maybe you guys wouldn't be so bad. Like, maybe if you just told us the truth, be like, whatever, you can still control stuff. We don't fucking want to do it. So whatever, you're in control. You're in control. We don't fucking care. I would love to see that shit, because I guarantee you that they could literally come out, tell the truth. The world would be like, meh, whatever. I'm still going to vote for anybody other than Trump. And that's another thing too, with regards to American politics. How can the country, and I haven't checked in with the country enough, but how can they believe that Bin Laden or Biden was a real sitting president? How can anyone believe that? The guy can't form a sentence. How can anyone believe that? And that's one of the craziest things. Like I said, when Donald Trump first showed up, I was like, I'm all for it. I still believe in politics, and Donald Trump is a disruptor, and we need him. I'm all for it. He might even be Q. But then as time progressed, 8 years later, I'm like, I don't give a shit about any of it. It's all fabricated. It's all bullshit. They're all fucking actors. What is the story with, what Trump did? He came in and he eradicated the idea of politics through insanity. And Biden shows up after him and puts the nail in the coffin on American politics through absurdity. The fact that anyone could think that this man was in charge of a nation, or that presidents sit down in big rooms and have very important conversations about things and move and shake. You're going to put that fucking idiot into some important and powerful situation, can't form a sentence, has a cracked out kid that is, the cocaine at the White House. Well, we don't know whose cocaine it is. Okay. We're still not allowed to talk about the Biden's laptop, or Hunter Biden. So to me, it's just like, it's just wild. It's just wild to know that there are people out there that refuse to even question or talk or assimilate any of this information. How on earth, ladies and gentlemen, no matter what rock you're under, how is it possible? And to any American listening to the show right now that may have believed in Biden, send me an email, info@thementalmastery.lines. How did you believe in him? I don't know. That's just me. I don't believe in Trudeau. I don't believe in Pierre. I like Pierre. When I was a kid, Pierre's riding was my hometown. Like, I've known Pierre since I'm 21 years old. I like him as an entity, as whatever he needs to be. I like him as what the WEF needs him to be as well. I believe that Trudeau ran this country like arbitrarily. Let's say, we were sitting at a level 1 or 2. Trudeau ran this country to a fucking 10, 9 or 10. And when Pierre gets in, he's going to draw it back to a 5 or 6. And so now we're going to be sitting 5 octaves above where we were, but we'll be thankful for it. Right. And that's how I see this coming through. So this octaves of fear, of scarcity, of whatever it is, we'll be operating 5 octaves above what we always operated, but we'll be thankful for it because Pierre will have pulled back the absurdity that was Trudeau, the absolute asininity that was Trudeau. Good fucking Lord. Trudeau was so bad, we should legitimately abolish all politics. That's how bad this guy was. And then you're going to hear people say things like, he's pretty good, we should vote for him again. What? Who are you and how does this happen?
Yeah. I know people who say that. And I know people who say that he handled the COVID crisis very well.
Would you have done any better, Craig? Yeah. As a matter of fact, I fucking would have. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, if I'd been handling it, people would have been able to get on a plane.
Yeah. 100%.
Because, and here's the thing that gets me about all that is that the people who really gave me the hardest time were friends of mine. Even after so much of the official narrative has crumbled since, in the last year, let's say.
Yeah.
We now know that the vaccine didn't stop transmission at all. And the lockdowns were negative. They were more harmful than any potential good they could have. So, but even the people that gave me a hard time at the time, they're not even. I don't even know that they're even aware that the whole story has crumbled.
Have you ever gotten?
Because they're still they're still believing the media.
Have you ever gotten an apology from any of them?
One.
Yeah,
one guy, it wasn't a huge apology, but one guy who actually used to date my sister many years ago. So I'm still kind of I'm in touch with him on Facebook. He's a good guy.
So day one, he was
giving me. Well, he was giving me a real hard time during COVID. Like, he was not the worst, but he was pretty strong. And after the whole thing was over, he wrote to me and he says, you called it.
Nice.
I see it now. I see now that you had it right. And he's the only person.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I've asked that question a lot. And
yeah,
you're the first person that's got one.
Yeah.
One. Yeah, you're the first person that's got, and I asked that question to a lot of people. So that's kind of neat. I don't have one. I mean, nobody's apologized to me or said, hey, I was a bit of a dick.
Well,
not that I need it. I don't need it.
Closest friends have not apologized. The ones that I really would appreciate an apology from, or at least an acknowledgement, like a crumb. Throw me a crumb. You're like, okay, maybe you were not so crazy after all. That would be at least something.
Yeah.
But I'm not getting that from those people at all. I think the fact that he did say that, I think, speaks well of his character, because it means, it's certainly very easy to just not say anything and just change the subject, So I'm grateful for that, but it's there are other people that I'm not going to stop my life in waiting
Oh
for
no, it'd just be
acknowledgement.
neat.
It would be neat because it would indicate that maybe they're willing to or at least reconsider what their opinion is. And it's funny, people don't necessarily realize, and I don't know if it's the case with you, but I actually have made some fairly major changes of position over my life. When I learned new things, like major
New
shifts
information.
of
Yeah.
of perspective. Um, I mean, I grew up in a family where everybody was conservative. Everybody voted for the Tories, and I remember actually thinking like Robert Stanfield in the 70s. This is before your time, but Robert Stanfield was the good guy and Pierre Trudeau was the bad guy. Like that was like my entire family felt that way. Um, and then later, I kind of went to university, and then I thought I realized, holy cow, actually my views are much more progressive than this, or much more left wing. So I ended up being an NDP supporter for a long time.
Right.
Then 9/11 came along, then that completely changed my perspective for obvious reasons. And now what's been going on in the last 3 or 4 years is causing me to kind of not necessarily turn my back on my left wing roots, but to sort of comment on the fact that the left seems to have departed to some other location, and some of the ideals that have always associated with the left, they're not part of the left anymore. Freedom of speech, anti-militarism, anti-imperialism, the things that I used to think were progressive things.
Right.
The left doesn't think those things anymore. It doesn't seem.
The left wants to shut you up. They want to control you.
Yeah. So now I'm kind of, now I'm getting crapped on by people who think, who now think I've gone to I've taken a right turn, like I've gone right wing. And it's not necessarily that. It's just that the left has abandoned a lot of common sense positions. And, like in the States, like the Republicans have taken up the slack, as the Democrats are pushing censorship, you get more Republicans saying no, free speech,
Yeah.
I mean, Republicans, they had their moments in the past where they were very pro censorship, but anyway, it's a very crazy thing. I think the people that I really have the most respect for are the ones that are capable of changing when they're faced with new information. They're capable of reassessing, and it's a hard thing for people to do, but
Speaking of new information, where can my listeners find you?
Well, I actually have two blogs, which is really kind of weird, but my original blog, and it has a lot of, like a dozen years of stuff on it. A lot of it about 9/11, but not only about 9/11. That one is truthandshadows.com. That was the reason I started a new one. I started a new one on Substack, and it's because I got the Truth and Shadows one got deleted by WordPress, and then so all the connections to all the pages were severed, and because of the way Google was changing its algorithm, it was just really hard to get people to articles there.
Yeah.
And so I thought I'll try another one on Substack and see if that'll if that'll make it easier to get stuff spread around. I don't know if it does or not, but anyway, my Substack one is called Thought Crimes and Misdemeanors, and it's thoughtcrimesandmisdemeanors.substack.com. I also do I do some videos. I'm still in the infancy of doing those, but I have a Truth and Shadows. Well, okay then.
Yeah.
Truth and Shadows YouTube channel. That's what it's called. I can give you a link if you want.
Oh,
and
all
I'm
of these will
also
be in
on
the show
Rumble.
liners as well. All of your links will be in the show liners.
Yeah. So that's at YouTube and Rumble for those, and I also do a lot of writing and stuff for architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. So I write content for their website.
Amazing.
Obviously, it's geared to the stuff they're doing. Whereas on my blog, I can kind of run wild and say whatever I want.
Be more free. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm glad to be associated with them, because I think they were around before like all the crazy censorship really got bad. So they still have they still have 500,000 followers on Facebook, right? A new group would never be able to do that.
Yeah.
Because it's just the deck is stacked against doing that again. So I think that's why I think it's important that they stick around and keep doing their thing.
Well, you're associated with us too, and we've been fighting the good fight for God knows how many years now, and it is impossible to grow an Instagram account now. I mean, ours is dead ceased because we are sharing motivation and kindness and free thinking and just general enjoyment of life. But yeah, this is one of those things that's, a lot of people are like, I want to fight. I want to argue. I don't want to be a part of this. And it's wild. It's wild where we are. But yeah, your stuff is phenomenal. It's always been phenomenal. I met you, like I said, out in Montreal, probably, I want to say 2013. So God, 12 years ago. It's been a long time. You and I have been friends, and it's easy to stay friends with somebody like you who will push the thought process and push the narrative and see, where we can go, because, we're all pushing together and hopefully having a good time as we go,
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad to find out that I didn't know you were going to be doing this kind of thing when I first met you, and probably vice versa, and so it's kind of just a nice situation that we both found we have more things in common than just where we happened to be working at the time.
Well, yeah, you were a writer and I was a sales guy, and I did sales coaching after I left that place, and I couldn't stand sales coaching because I didn't want to trick people into doing anything. And then I went into business coaching, and then I went into podcasting and speaking and freedom of speech. But you and I always had interesting conversations back then, even about crazier shit, So that was in there. That tune was in there. The seed had been planted. Yeah. But it was super exciting to have you back here again. And again, I'm going to try to get you back next year around the same time, So I always like to have you around on the 9/11. You're our 9/11 guy. And if we do panels again, we'll definitely, because we're starting to do more panels and having more people come on to the show, and we'll definitely have you back on for that. And ladies and gentlemen, again, Craig will be found in the show notes. We'll have all of his links there. But Truth and Shadows. I remember that being, that's 12 years that thing's been around. So that's a good one right there.
Yep.
Even if the links are dead, it's still filled with great articles.
Well, you can go to you can go to the thing and all the links are fine. It's just that it's not connected to like places that would repost my articles. Those links got severed, but the site works like, like it's supposed to work. So
it works like it's supposed to work, but all your kickbacks and linkbacks and all your, traffic
all that's
generator.
Gone.
Yeah. Google knew what they were doing. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Can't let this guy get too much coverage out there. Well, that was awesome. It was a lot of fun to have you on here, Craig.
My pleasure. I enjoyed it.
Like I said, we'll do it again next year. And ladies and gentlemen, in the infamous words of Red Green, keep your stick on the ice.
We really hope you enjoyed this episode of the Mental Mastery Alliance podcast. Stay connected with us directly through the mentalmasteryalliance.com. You can also join the discussion on Instagram at instagram.com/the Mental Mastery Alliance. Let the team know you're listening by using the hashtag TMMA or tagging us at the Mental Mastery Alliance. To have your voice heard on the show, leave a voicemail or send a text to 647-338-1265. Long distance charges may apply. If you love us, leave us a review. If you hate us, you spend your time in weird ways, but also leave a review. Every review on iTunes tickles the algorithm, helping us grow. Until next time, unity over division. This concludes the most surreal portion of your day.
You got it, Pontiac.